so I can finally throw the rock.
Hey, check it. Okay, I feel unstoppable. Losing's impossible.
And put the ball where only I can catch it.
Thing they know.
Yo, Hit Boy, what you think?
I could make the biggest hit in the game, man.
You ain't lying, bro. We live?
Oh, we live.
We made it till you got stars. Go out and shop for you.
Taylor?
Wait, just...
We're live.
Wait, what? Slice up the defense with Field Sense.
You can do that too.
We need some big plays, big hits, right now.
Say less.
Woo, now that's a hit.
Touche.
So, what can you change with Field Sense?
I don't judge, I sing. Staying down for the come up till I reign supreme.
Everything.
Let's get it. Yeah. Hit boy. We got another one.
Good evening, good morning, wherever you're watching. How's the form? Michael McQuaid, Colin Cronin, Brian O'Leary, Mark Cockrell. Folks, Mark got lost in the car park in SoFi Stadium in February and suddenly turned up last week. Good to have you back, Mark. Welcome everyone. We're a week out from the start of the NFL season. Irish NFL show presented by Cassidy Travel, the principal travel sponsor of the show, Ireland's biggest travel agent. You can check out Cassidy Travel, search cassidytravel.ie for NFL deals. We'll talk a bit more about that during the show. If you're on YouTube, check the link in the bio after the show because I was too tired to actually put the link in, but it'll be in all the other bios for a chance to have Game Pass for free this season. We're going to announce the winners on Sunday night. Colin, a week out, have you stocked up on the coffee yet?
Yeah, at this point, I cannot wait to actually be staying up late. And obviously for the Broncos, Michael, going to be a little bit different than last year when there were no primetime games. But I think Andrew Brandt had a tweet earlier this week where he said he will watch every minute of the regular season. He watched 0 minutes of the preseason. I feel very, very similar to that. The tackles matter, the touchdowns matter. I cannot wait till this time next week.
You buzzing, Brian, for next week?
Yeah, I can't believe we're nearly there, a week away. You know, it feels like it still feels a bit to go. I think there's going to be a little bit of activity with potential trades, and players might get surprisingly dropped come early next week. But yeah, we're nearly there, and what a way to start the season. I know it's obviously the Super Bowl champions, you know, with the exception of that 1 year when it was the 100th anniversary. But I mean, what a game to start! Like, you could argue this is potentially a game that we could definitely see come next February in Arizona, and Josh Allen going up against Matthew Stafford. I mean, what more would you want on a Thursday into Friday morning next week?
It's going to be a good weekend, Mark, and provided we have you for the next hour on your Wi-Fi, well, I'm joking. I had to get that comment in. Mark, we're now in the top 50 sports podcasts in Ireland, ahead of some GEA podcasts and stuff. I think it's your soothing tone since you've come back to this show.
Thank you, Michael. I feel like playing some smooth jazz now or something to continue that smooth tones in relation to it. But, you know, getting to more exciting matters, we are a week out, as you said, and whether you're a fan of the Kansas City Chiefs facing the toughest 8 games of all time, considering on last year's strength of schedule, or you're a fan of the Jacksonville Jaguars who are just upset that they have to face other football teams, you know, we're all fans. We're all getting excited for the games coming up. And of course, Michael, you mentioned Game Pass. On Game Pass, with the free subscription, you can view Hard Knocks and NFL Network programming. It's not all about the preseason, but bring on real football. Week away.
Big special shout out to everyone listening to the podcast, watching on YouTube. I think that we had comments from I'm really good at the computer tonight. Fred and Keith so far, lads, thanks a million. Get the comments in. If you want to get some questions in, we'll answer the questions maybe towards the end of the show, and we'll give them the time that they deserve. Obviously, questions must be relevant to the NFL and not involve any football teams that won tonight or won last night in suspicious circumstances. Colin, before we get our guest on tonight, do you want to go through the first topic? And we'll start off with you. Russell Wilson signed a new deal today. I think it's $245 million, which I actually went online to convert it to euros, and it's like 1-to-1. So when did that happen, for a start? And secondly, why is this news? We knew this was going to be news. He was always going to sign a contract. He was always going to be for big money. He wasn't just going to come in and leave next year. Yeah, I mean, like maybe he could have. I don't know, but see, like the whole talk of the Seattle is, well, this is the reason he left because of money. I mean, come on.
Well, I imagine it's one we'll get into with our guest as well. But I think what everyone was looking for on this contract was whether it was going to be guaranteed or not. We had seen JC Treader come out after he retired last week and talked about the kind of interesting interview he gave, and he had pushed for Russ to ask for a fully guaranteed contract. I think the 31 other teams, did obviously really annoyed about the guaranteed contract. Ignore who it was given to, but a guaranteed contract, 230 million. We know that the cap is going to continue to go up and go up significantly over the next few years. I think what will be interesting, I suppose, is to see the impact this has potentially on Lamar Jackson. Obviously, Justin Herbert's contract is going to be coming up, Joe Burrow. And the bigger these contracts get, the more that you guarantee, the more you have to hold in escrow. And obviously, the more you have to hold and put aside is going to impact on who the owners are and their ability to do that. I suppose the interesting thing as well around this is the fact that the Broncos hadn't, had to get it done, I think, before week 1 or press pause until next spring. And they have got it done. And I think they will be very happy to have gotten it done before those other deals.
Just wanted to, I suppose, piggyback on what Colin said at the end there. No one's surprised by the contract. I don't think many people are even surprised by the nature in terms of the value of the contract. I am quite surprised it's happened the week prior to the season, because I felt we could have got to a stage where, to Colin's point, that it was getting so close to the pause moment. I think essentially Monday would have been the pause moment, because they're getting into game week, and I know Welshers are playing on Monday. The focus would have been entirely on Seattle and not trying to negotiate with his agent and get a deal done. And I felt it would have dragged on into the season. And there was a few conversations with various different people in the media. They said the Broncos would be comfortable waiting until the next offseason, because, as you said there at the start, Michael, it's not like he's going anywhere. So why not give it the season to see how it goes on? And they might be in a little bit of a better position bargaining-wise come next season. But obviously the Wilson camp are very clear. And yeah, I can understand why you might say that around the Seattle thing. Like, that contract has been a bugbear for a while in Seattle, and obviously he felt he wasn't getting paid to the value of his performance. The team wasn't as successful as maybe his performances. So look, for Denver, it's positive news. You're moving in the right direction. New season, quarterback secure. There's not many more excuses, I would think, for Denver this season. And I know it's a very competitive division, but I feel they put a good team around them. So we'll see. The proof will be in the pudding come week 5, week 8, week 9 when we get to London, in terms of where that team is for the second half of the season.
Mark, we didn't really have you on the show whenever this all happened. So have you anything that you want to dump on us now in terms of, I don't know, where Russell Wilson maybe is in terms of his ranking in the AFC West before our guest comes on in a couple of minutes?
I know. I think I had a couple of bites at you last time. We actually had Lindsay Jones on in relation to it. But my problem with Russell Wilson Broncos is more the players from 30 to 53. I still think there's a depth issue more than anything. And, you've had some injuries like Tim Patrick, which are massive. Russell Wilson is a really good quarterback in the NFL. One of the things that's been a fascinating thing in Seattle at all times is this constant mantra of let Russ cook, and they're holding him back and they're restraining him. I don't think that's necessarily true, but at the same token, if you look at his numbers and you look at where he might go with a pass-heavy offense, it's going to be a fascinating combination to see how all that combines. And there have been times, of course, let Russ cook that first 8 games of the season, I think 3 years ago, when he was setting record numbers, and then it fell off a cliff as teams adapted to it. But he's a Super Bowl winning quarterback. He still remains mobile. He's 31. He's on the older side, let's face it, of somebody getting these massive contracts. In terms of who we've seen get massive contracts so far, it's been the Patrick Mahomes, Deshaun Watson, Josh Allen, Kyler Murray. So that is a risk, especially if he gets injured with the level of the guarantee. You could be in salary cap hell early. But Russell Wilson has only missed 3 games in his career so far, all last year with a fractured finger. So you'd like to rely upon that good health maintaining. in that regard. The fascinating thing really for me is what Colin was alluding to. Look at the snowball effect. A couple of years ago, Kirk Cousins got the first fully guaranteed multi-year contract for a quarterback. And I remember us saying, I think we talked about it on the show, it was like, hey, is this going to be the dawn of a new day? And since then, many quarterbacks are given pretty team-friendly deals when it came to the total guarantees, especially Allen, especially Mahomes. Big deals in size, but not necessarily on guarantee. This is now the third biggest guaranteed contract in history, but even still, Lamar Jackson is going to be looking at this saying, come on, man. You didn't do me any favors. You could have pushed them a bit harder because, as Colin alluded to, where is the true market if you're in San Diego, LA, the LA Chargers? Where's the true market for the Cincinnati Bengals? Is it Deshaun Watson's with the $230 million guarantee, or is it more the Kyler Murray, Russell Wilson line? So that's going to be the fascinating thing to determine.
Yeah, and fascinating as well because I think the Chargers have got either, is it 2 or 3 years? I think it's 2 years before they have to start worrying about paying Justin Herbert money. And I mean, going by the current rate, what the hell is it going to be at in 2 or 3 years' time? We're still waiting for a guest to come on, so I will say this and maybe get a very quick roundtable discussion here. We talked about Lamar Jackson there, lads. He originally has come out, and I think he said like week 1 is his deadline column for getting this all over the line. He doesn't have an agent. We've talked about this many times. Can you see this happening before next Sunday?
I think if you're the Ravens, you want to get it done because, yeah, they'll press pause, but it's going to be asked over and over and over again every single week, every press conference. If Lamar has a good game or Lamar has a bad game, it'll be about the contract. If he has a good game, it'll be, well, what's his value now? If he has a bad game, it's like, does this take some value off? If they get to the playoffs, it's, well, what does this add? This is the distraction that I imagine John Harbaugh and the Ravens will want to get rid of. Listen, go back this time last year, TJ Watt, right? It didn't look like it was going to get done. It did get done. And then TJ went on to have quite the season. There are no guarantees, but I would imagine both sides will want to get it done between Lamar and the Ravens.
Yeah, I think back to my point earlier on, I think come Monday, it's all guns blazing in terms of focusing on that game in MetLife on Sunday week against the Jets. And, and especially by the fact he doesn't have an agent, so it's not necessarily like he can say, right, you go off and manage all that with the GM and obviously the back office and the company when the deal is concluded. Like he essentially is the guy negotiating for himself with his mother, I believe, and, involved as well. So no, I don't see it happening. When Colin says about whether he has a good game or a bad game, what happens if he gets injured? Because he's had some quite severe injuries throughout the course of his career, and a lot of that's down to the fact that he's such a dual threat in terms of the run and the pass. And once he gets injured again, he's missing for 4 or 5 games, and then that inconsistency comes in, and they're left playing Huntley for a number of games. That to me is the biggest risk here, because he's such a dynamic quarterback, but he's prone to getting the injury because of the way in which he plays the game. So I think he's taken a dangerous move here, and like we said during the offseason and certainly during the summer when we recorded live, is he one of these quarterbacks next summer that we just never believed that he would be traded or he would move on from the Ravens? But it's going to get to a stage where the Ravens are just going to say enough's enough, and you can't keep going to the well and expecting someone to sign it. Why hasn't he signed? I mean, he's been offered 40-45 million a year. That's substantial no matter what way you look at it.
Yeah, you say that, Brian, but he's looking now at Russell Wilson setting the bar at 50 million, and the other deals setting the bar at 50 million. And in fairness to Lamar Jackson, I mean, it's right, he doesn't have an agent, but it can go horribly wrong if you have an agent. I want to bring you back to Michael before you were born, probably 1999, one of the worst contracts of all time. NFL draft occurs. Mike Ditka sacrifices the entire New Orleans Saints draft to draft Ricky Williams, and then Ricky Williams uses Master P, who's trying to set up as a sports agent, to negotiate his contract in what's widely regarded as probably one of the worst contracts of all time. He got an $8.8 million signing bonus in the times when obviously the contracts weren't stacked as they are now, obviously first round picks, which is a nice sum of money, but minimum salary, lots of incentives were never likely to be made for a player that had all the leverage. And that's what it always comes down to in these scenarios. Like, look at Aaron Rodgers recently. Where is the leverage? Ricky Williams had it at the time. and scuttered it away in the nicest possible way. Lamar Jackson still, even though he hasn't won a Super Bowl, even though he hasn't brought the Ravens to an AFC Championship game, has shown all the right signs, and he has a hell of a lot of leverage. But he and his mum are going up against probably one of the sharpest front offices in the NFL. And it's a fascinating contrast to see where that will fall and where that will come. And who knows what's going in the machinations? Is he looking for a higher guaranteed sum? Because he equally is worried about the injury risk. And are the Ravens looking to de-minimize the guarantee because of that injury risk? You know, we're not in those rooms, but there's some of those conversations these people are going to be having, because it's not obviously always about the top line number. It's about what you're guaranteed to walk away with come hell nor high water. And in fact, the problem in many respects with Russell Wilson's deal is we're even further away from ever having fully guaranteed NFL contracts like their MLB or NBA counterparts have.
There was a number of conversations, a number of storylines during the summer about this situation, and a lot of people felt that it would be within his best interest to go and get an agent, because that defers him from having that awkward conversation with the head coach and the GM where they say, we're not happy with essentially a part of his game. He needs to address that. And then obviously his agent goes and has that conversation. He's in the firing line. You know, can you imagine? There must be some kind of challenging conversations when they sit down and try work out a financial deal, which can be clouded by a conversation on how he's playing the game and what they want from him and how they expect him to change his play. Because like any quarterback, no matter how dynamic he is throughout the course of their career, they're not the player that was in year 1, year 2, and they do change and evolve. But maybe they're looking for a little different, you know, in terms of what he's going to bring to the team. And maybe he's looking from the point of view, well, if you want me to do this, well, then I expect a lot more in return financially.
I think this is going to drag on for a while. Now I've said that, I'll be sitting tomorrow at 6 o'clock, about to close all the computers down for the week, and Lamar Jackson will have signed a $300 million deal probably. That's my luck. Right, we have got a special guest tonight. We're 1 week out from the season, and it's honestly fantastic to welcome in someone that was previously at The Athletic, US Today, and the Denver Post, president of Pro Football Writers, and now with The Ringer, a new move. Delighted to welcome in Lindsay Jones back to the show. Back to the show, Lindsay. It's awesome to have you on again.
Hi guys, how's it going? So sorry for the delay. It's been a busy day here in Denver, as you guys probably have been talking about.
Yes, it's look, there's never a dull moment in this league, and I think the news came out at like 7 o'clock Mountain this morning.
Yeah, it was early here, local time.
Well, first off, even before we get your reaction to that, Lindsay, you've had a very busy off season, like going to the Ringer. It must be a very, very busy few weeks. We met Roger Sherman in Dublin last weekend for the Ringer, and he was full of good fun. So it was good fun.
Yes, I'm so glad that you guys got to have Roger on the show. It worked out. I'm sure it worked out great. He's fantastic. I actually have been busy today editing one of his stories. So yeah, it's been a busy off season. I kind of this move to the Ringer. I'm doing kind of a different job now. I'm editing, and so much less writing. I did write an AFC West piece last week, so mostly just to see if I could still write, if I hadn't, make sure I hadn't forgotten how. But yeah, I'm much more in like a editing, managing kind of role now, but I'll still be podcasting. I mean, that's one of the most fun things about the Ringer is that we have a ton of podcasts, so I can get my takes out there still.
Well, Roger was very excited about having you as his editor, and I'm wearing my purple tonight in his honor for Northwestern and the victory. But we did mention obviously the Russell Wilson contract, and I suppose is in terms of that, Lindsay, we're like, given the way it's structured, we talked a little bit about the guarantees. It helps having the new owner who's so rich that he can get the commissioner's name wrong and not have to worry about it, right?
Yeah, I mean, that was really, to me, it was never a matter of like, oh no, are they going to get Russell Wilson's deal done? We've known since the trade happened in March that they were going to sign him long-term. They weren't going to give up all of that draft capital and stuff and have it be a one and out type of deal. It was just, to do a deal of that magnitude, there's a lot that goes into it. And I'm sure as soon as the Walton Penner group was, I'm sure all of the groups that came through that building back in May were made aware of, Russell Wilson is our long-term quarterback, and this is something that you're going to have to do, once the owner. It's not like they probably sprung this on them in July, but you got to get the ownership approval, especially when you're giving out what is 100 and I don't have it in front of me, but whatever the massive number of guarantees are, and yeah, it is nice. I mean, around here, look, Pat Bowlen is revered, right? I mean, he was a great owner. He did really good things for this organization and for this city. But not having that kind of main owner for the last almost 10 years now, not quite 10 years. I mean, it has hampered a little bit of their ability to do business, and especially those type of massive deals. And the Walton Penner Group now, I mean, they're the richest owners in the NFL. I mean, he's got more money than Kroenke. He's got more money than Jerry Jones. He's got more money than David Tepper in Carolina. And yes, there's still a salary cap, but cash is king in the NFL. And the Broncos are now flush with cash that they didn't have before.
Lindsay, just going to jump into a couple of teams and get your thoughts ahead of the season. At the Titans, like, bearing in mind they were number 1 seed last year, there's kind of the sense that it's a bit of an unknown out there in terms of what the expectation is. Busy day for them. Derrick Henry gets his contract, I suppose, refreshed, shall we say, and then obviously they've had a serious ACL injury, one of their leading players on defense. Are you buying into that this is a drop-off potentially with the Colts being much stronger this year?
I think so. Yeah. I mean, it's almost like a trivia question. Like, you could go into a bar, right, and be like, who was the number 1 seed in the AFC last year? And like 8 out of 10 people would probably say like the Bills or the Chiefs. And nobody would remember that it was actually the Titans, because they were a surprising 1 seed. They won a lot of weird games. Mike Vrabel ended up winning Coach of the Year, which was, mostly because they kept the train on the tracks when Derrick Henry was hurt. But man, what an offseason. I mean, no team has probably fallen off as much as they have. Just, they couldn't keep AJ Brown, and they didn't really replace AJ Brown with anybody substantial. I mean, we'll see. I mean, maybe Treylon Burks, but like, it doesn't seem like he's even going to be ready to start week 1. Yeah. And then the Harold Landry injury, that's significant. I mean, he was their best pass rusher last year. He was kind of on that fringe of like, not in that conversation of like the best pass rushers, but he was kind of in that next tier down where, you could rely on him to get consistent pressure throughout a game and a double-digit sack kind of guy. So losing him where they don't have a ton of depth at that position, that's a big deal. I mean, if anything, I think the Colts were already the favorite in that division, and that really, that injury today, I think really only opens the door even further for Indianapolis in that division.
Lindsay, Tennessee was such a surprise number 1 seed that I know someone on this show might have even forgotten when we were doing our AFC West prediction when he said that the Chiefs were the number 1 seed because it was
felt
so
like
low-key.
They were, right?
It did.
I mean, they were hosting the AFC Championship game. Yeah, it's fine.
Again. But actually, I want to bring you back a little bit to Russell Wilson in terms of the macro implications. So we were just talking a little bit about what does this mean in other places? And one of the places this impacts and resonates massively is going to be in Baltimore. And the impact for Lamar Jackson, the impact for that team. And the guys were just saying is like, and you allude to as well, like John Harbaugh won't want this hanging over in week 1. So, what does this mean for Baltimore in terms of the impact? And especially Lamar Jackson, who's probably phoning Russell Wilson right now and saying, mate, it's 165 million guaranteed, but it would have been nicer if it'd been closer up to Deshaun Watson's 230 million guaranteed. That would have helped me out a little bit.
Yeah, it's such an interesting situation because, usually these things happen kind of, there's like a regular timing to them. Like, you kind of know who's next, and, the dominoes fall one by one. And now we've had, Kyler got his deal done, and now Russell. And, I was honestly not even convinced it was going to happen before the start of the season, because it was one of those, like, it's going to happen, so why do you have to rush it? But the fact that they're able to get it done means there's going to be no questions about his contract throughout the duration of the season. It's been really hard to predict what's going on with the Ravens situation and with Lamar Jackson, because he's not really ascribing to any of these norms and the typical timeline and the way negotiations go. I think a large part of that is he's representing himself. So there's nobody kind of speaking on his behalf in the media. There's nobody leaking to Adam Schefter about contract proposals and demands. We are only left to follow like what he's liking on Twitter, and like it's, what he responds to. I mean, it's a very unusual situation, but I think we all kind of know what his contract range is going to be. I think the Ravens will be able to pay for it. They're not a cash poor team by any means. They're very financially sound. Steve Biscotti is one of the, he's not one of the richest owners, but he's also not one of the poorest owners. I think where this is going to get really interesting is this quarterback market has exploded, is what's going to happen for Joe Burrow and Justin Herbert. Because if we're talking about the haves and the have-nots in the NFL, and when it comes to cash, the Bengals are not there. The Bengals are not a team that's going to be able to put, the NFL still has these kind of antiquated escrow rules, basically, where you have to put, 75 to 80% of guaranteed money into escrow. And no problem for Greg Penner and Rob Walton to do that. Not a problem. Not a problem for Stan Kroenke to do that. Not a problem for Jimmy Haslam to do that. That's going to be a problem for the Brown family and probably for the Spanos family to be able to do that with their quarterbacks that are coming up. And if that's going to affect their long-term negotiations. So, I think the agent community is looking at the Russell Wilson deal, just like they looked at the Kyler Murray deal and said, not great that those guys weren't getting those fully guaranteed. When they saw the Deshaun deal, they all thought, great, here we go. This is it. This is where the guaranteed contracts come. That's what the union was thinking. And now it's a small sample size, but now we have 2 massive quarterback contracts since Deshaun Watson that have not come even close to the full guarantees. So one, I tweeted this earlier, it makes it all that more mind-boggling what the Browns did. I mean, they felt that they had to do that to get him, but the fact that they did it and under those circumstances, it feels real gross. And, I guess that part's not going away, right? I mean, his contract structure is going to live on for a really long time, very long reaching ramifications there.
Absolutely. I can't wait to see what's going to happen with Lamar's contract. And it could be soon, for all we know.
I hope it's not a
Lindsay,
holiday weekend, like you were saying. We're about to go into a holiday weekend here. I think a lot of people are going to be signing off tonight, not going to be signing back on until Tuesday mornings. So if we could.
Well, this is the last weekend before it all starts. So
yeah. That's why the timing made so much sense for Russell Wilson. And they might, sometimes teams set kind of these artificial deadlines where it's like, if the deal's not done by week 1, we're not doing it. Negotiations are done, we're cutting it off. Usually that's with more franchise tag guys going into the last year of their deal. I guess Lamar potentially could be in that situation. But nobody wants this lasting into regular season preparations.
Let's see what happens. I hope it doesn't ruin your weekend. I want to get, if you don't mind, Lindsay, can I get and I know you've probably been asked this a lot over the last few weeks, can you give us a bold prediction? Because we've got an episode next Wednesday where we're going to preview the season, give MVP picks, Super Bowl picks, bold predictions. Can you think of something that maybe you haven't said yet that you think could be very bold? Because I know sometimes now you almost feel like you have to go really over the top for a bold prediction. But
yeah, I did send in we're going to have our staff predictions publishing next week, and I sent that list in. I still have to write them. I had Nick Bosa as my defensive player of the year, who he's a little bit further down on the odds, but I think he narratively fits a lot of what tends to happen for that award. He's probably in the 15 plus sack range, should be one of the very best defenses in the NFL. We'll probably have them in them, have the Niners in some games. If they're a good team, their defense is probably gonna have to carry them through some games. He hasn't won that award before. We all as voters get bored with Aaron Donald, even though it should be Aaron Donald. But so I picked him, and then probably my weird one, the one that is gonna blow up in my face and I'll get made fun of all over the internet, was I put Mitchell Trubisky for comeback player of the year. Because the list, and this is probably what I'm going to write when I actually get to sit down to do this, the list of comeback player of the year candidates is pretty grim. It's Christian McCaffrey, Jameis Winston, Derrick Henry, Allen Robinson. There's no Joe Burrow. There's no Dak Prescott. There's no, Alex Smith. There's no real obvious quarterback coming off of a devastating injury type of situation. I don't trust that Christian McCaffrey is going to make it through a year hurt. So I was who could, be decent this year? And I don't know if the Steelers will be good. I honestly don't know if Mitchell Trubisky is going to start week 1. Mike Tomlin is playing so coy with that decision. But if they let's say the Steelers, let's say Trubisky is their quarterback, and let's say they win 8 games, He goes from being like a bust backup quarterback, can't believe anybody's going to sign this guy to start, and he's like a competent starter. Might be worth throwing down like $5 or something on it. I don't know. That's my bad bold prediction that is sure to be wrong and will probably get make me a joke on the internet, but that's fine. I'm okay with it.
I hope for Mike Tomlin's sake he wins 9 games to keep Mike's winning season record going.
Well, I think he does have one 8-8 season in there, so you can't say he's only had winning seasons, because there was there was one 5. He's just never had a losing season. Now the math, right? They're going to need to win 9. 8 games isn't going to cut it anymore. You're better at math.
Yeah, he could be the guy who ends it for Mike Tomlin. But glad we have you on the show, because there have been incredible divisions on this show in recent weeks, Lindsay. It's split the 2 guys at the top of the screen, the Patriots, and what Bill Belichick is doing. On one hand, Michael thinks Bill has finally, lost his mind and it's done. And Mark thinks, how can you possibly question the greatest football mind in the history of anything? He can do no wrong. Ignore Cam Newton and anything else that has gone on. Mark still has Bill as the anointed one. Obviously, Roger wrote a piece for The Ringer around the shenanigans, shall we say, and what's your take? Is this Bill just toying with the media and everything is going to be fine? Or like, can things really be fine when Joe Judge and Matt Patricia are involved?
I think it's an incredible amount of hubris from Bill Belichick. And I think it's right. He is the greatest football coach of all time. He's one of the greatest defensive minds we've ever seen. He had a tremendous amount of success. I still think this is like batshit crazy. I'm sorry. Can I curse on here? I don't know. I mean, I can't, it does not make sense to me in any sense. And they're not a team that's really close right now. It's one thing that if you say, okay, we have Tom Brady, or like a quarterback that's anywhere even close to Tom Brady, or we have an excellent offensive line, or you have the best defense in the NFL. Like, maybe you can get away with tinkering somewhere else. But they're doing this with a second-year quarterback who was decent last year. He was the best of a bad rookie class last year. You're doing it with an offensive line that is not good. You're doing it with one of the worst skill position groups of receivers in the NFL. And then you're just going to pass your offense over to 2 guys who have never actually done it and try to incorporate all these different schemes. That's something that Roger didn't really even get into in this piece. And it's something that I think we're going to be exploring with one of the other writers in the near future. Is like, it's not like they're just taking Josh McDaniels' playbook and just like letting somebody else call the plays. Like, they're trying to recreate reinvent their entire offense. It's insane. Like, the Patriots have always, when it was the Belichick Brady Patriots, they would always get to these slow starts, right? It'd be like, oh, what's wrong with the Patriots? Or, they lost a game to the Jets early in the season, or whoever it is. And you kind of start to get the panic. And then all of a sudden October hits and they just crush everybody for the rest of the season. Like, they do not have the wiggle room to mess around for the first 4 games of the season, right? I mean, if they do not know what they're doing and look completely incompetent on offense for the first month of the season, and there's no indication that they're not going to play in the regular season like they did in they were a disaster in the preseason. Look, preseason games don't matter, but like, they were like that every single practice, right? Like, this is not like, oh, a fluky preseason game where your 3rd or 4th stringers are getting beat by the Raiders backups. No, this is everybody, your entire offense not functioning. The Bills are going to be really good. If you want to like mess around for 4 weeks while you try to figure out who's going to be your play caller and what your offense is going to look like, the Bills are going to be 4-0, and that's it. You can't even approach playoff contention. And then what? Like, what do you know about Mac Jones at that point? Are you going to have to blow this thing up? Like, you're going to set yourself? I don't. Clearly, I have some thoughts about this. I didn't realize I had quite this many thoughts, but I think it's nuts. And another thing that Roger did get into, and I don't know if you guys have show notes or anything you could link to his piece, also, like, coaching diversity is a really big deal, right, in the NFL, and fortifying the coaching pipeline. And we know how much of a struggle it has been for minority coaches, particularly on the offensive side of the ball, to get into quarterback coaching roles, to get into play calling roles. And Bill Belichick is just handing that job to Matt Patricia. Like, what an insult to like all these coaches that are trying to like come up the right way. And, you know, especially minority coaches who are just like trying to get a real shot. If the league office people had any like guts right now, they would call Bill Belichick in to be like, what are you doing, man? Like, what are you doing? But I don't think they would actually do that. So those are my thoughts. I had a lot of thoughts. Sorry.
Lindsay, I can see Mark as a Patriots fan. I can see his face draining in the past 5 minutes.
I mean, maybe it will be fine. Maybe it will be fine. Maybe Matt Patricia is the greatest play caller this side of Kyle Shanahan, but I doubt it.
Lindsay, the Bucks are the overwhelming favourites for the South, but with the exception of that playoff game a couple of years ago, the Saints have had their number for quite a long time, and this is an interesting time for the Saints. Again, it's a mixed opinion on how successful the Saints will be this year. A lot of people feel that if they did a great job last year, they were so close to making the playoffs, and they've done reasonably well in the offseason in terms of bringing players in. Obviously, there's a new transition to a head coach. Are you high on the Saints? Do you think Dennis Allen will learn from his first experience as a head coach and do well there?
I'm not high on the Saints. I mean, I think they'll be kind of an average team. I think their defense is pretty good. I think they've got decent skill position players. Still kind of keep waiting for that Alvin Kamara suspension to come. That is definitely like a Labor Day weekend news drop that could land at some point.
There was a story today that they're going to hold off on that one. That they weren't going to do anything before the season started. We actually spoke about it on the show last week.
Yeah, I've been like head down in some other files and must not have seen that one today.
We felt that was unusual that they weren't going to make a decision before the season.
Yeah, it's kind of odd. I mean, I guess they're still waiting to do a little bit more of their investigation. I mean, the dude got arrested at the Pro Bowl. Like, you probably need to speed this along, right? It was literally at the stadium right after the Pro Bowl. They let him play, even though the police were like there waiting for him. So anyways, I think any assumption that the Saints are going to be good is just like discounting how good of a coach that Sean Payton is. He was really good, and he had control over everything in that organization. He had final say on personnel. You know, he was the architect of the offense. He was the play caller. So while there is consistency, the rest of the staff, and like, you know, I think Pete Carmichael has been a really good offensive coordinator, but he's never been the primary play caller. He's never been the primary scheme designer. You're pulling out what, you know, arguably a future Hall of Fame head coach and Sean Payton, and just assuming that everything will continue on fine without him. And that's just, I think, a little bit too big of an assumption for me to make. I'm not quite there yet. I think Dennis Allen is a really good defensive coordinator. We have no evidence that he's going to be a good head coach. His tenure with the Raiders was not great. A lot of people fail as head coaches of the Raiders because that is oftentimes a dysfunctional organization. But that's just, it's like a little bit of a leap too far. Like, it makes sense that the Bucs are the main favorite and by a long shot there. I think, you know, defensively, they've had really good plans for Brady, which has frustrated him. But I think over the course of the season, I don't think they'll be able to hang with the Bucs in that division, I guess is where I come down on it.
Lindsay, I'm not sure if I'm more terrified about your analysis of the Patriots to say that the defense is the bit that's been worrying me more than the offense even. So that's not a good sign necessarily. So they were eviscerated by the Bills last year in a couple of games and haven't necessarily upgraded. So I'm just shaking at night, holding myself, saying it's all going to be fine. It's all going to be fine. It's all going to be fine. And on your point about Sean Payton, we were talking about this on our NFC South review. Remember, everybody, Sean Payton 9-3 with Jameis Winston and Taysom Hill as the starting quarterbacks. He only failed last year because he had to start Ian Book and people like this. And 0-5 were your third and fourth choice quarterbacks. Two other points, Lindsay. Of course, on Labor Day, don't worry. At IRE NFL, we'll keep everybody covered. We'll keep the guys covered. We'll take care of you. And you mentioned about the Steelers, which have gone through a lot of change this offseason. Obviously, Kevin Colbert leaving, Ben Roethlisberger retiring, first ever general manager of the Steelers, and obviously their two-time winning quarterback. But another organization that's gone through a vast amount of change this offseason, probably not for the best, is actually down in Dallas. Good old Jerry Jones and the Dallas Cowboys. And when we look at the talent that has left Dallas this offseason, it's probably going below the radar just how stripped bare, especially in that middle class of the roster, that team has been.
Yeah. I mean, their defense was one of the best surprises in the NFL last year. I mean, this time, 2021, I think we're all talking like, I don't know if their defense is going to be any good. I don't know if Dan Quinn's going to be like the right defensive coordinator. And then they came out and like blew everybody out of the water. Micah Parsons is a generational defensive talent. Trayvon Diggs had almost a dozen interceptions. Like, I'm not sure how replicable that is. He also gave up a lot of really big plays. He was just like a roller coaster of a player. But yeah, I mean, they're realizing now the pains of what happens when you pay a lot of guys on offense. Like, they had a pretty narrow window, right, to win with Dak, Ezekiel Elliott, and Amari Cooper on those like really, really rich deals. And they couldn't pay, and their offensive line, they were paying a lot of money there, and it's not sustainable. So if you don't win within that window, then you have to start cutting guys. And right now, I mean, they traded Amari Cooper for way under value, given what other receivers went for later that year. And they didn't really replace him. So they're a team that I think I want to go through and look exactly like, did they make waiver claims? What does their receiver room look like right now? Because they definitely, it's worse than it was before. I mean, they're paying some tight ends. It's like very curious what their plan is going to be. And if they're going to be such like a run heavy team, how much they're invested in Ezekiel Elliott versus Tony Pollard. Like, I don't know. Like, I'm not super excited about them. And when you look at the NFC East, the Eagles seem to be a team that made significant strides. They have more questions about exactly how good their quarterback is. I think we know how good Dallas's quarterback is, but the questions then are the rest of the roster. So which do you feel better about, like the deeper roster, the ascending team with quarterback questions, or the guy that it's like, is Dak going to have to carry this entire team on his back? Or Dak and Micah Parsons. I really like Micah Parsons. I think he's the real deal. But yeah, I mean, it was a big talent drain this offseason, and they have to play the Bucks, I think, Sunday night, week 1. So we're going to see right away if offensively they can hang with what should be a really good offense in Tampa.
We'll get a very, very quick fire final round here. Yeah, that's going to be interesting, that offense in Tampa. They've had, someone's had a nice holiday this summer. I'll come back to that. Who's getting fired first, Lindsay? Mike McCarthy or Cliff Kingsbury?
Oh, I mean, Matt Rule probably has to be in that conversation too.
Absolutely.
If Baker struggles in Carolina. I don't think it's going to be Cliff. He just got a big old contract extension. They seem very committed to the Cliff, Kyler, Keim trifecta there in Arizona. For whatever reason that might be. I'm not sure if that was the right call. But yeah, all three of those guys just got extensions. So we'll see. Who are the other one? You said Mike McCarthy. And then who was your other?
You came in with a car.
I came in with Rule. I mean, the thing about McCarthy that's interesting is that like Jerry Jones is just such a wild card, right? Like he's been very loyal to coaches, which is why Jason Garrett was there forever and ever and ever and ever. But now you got the Sean Payton thing. Sean Payton's just kind of hanging out there. How long do you kind of hang out in mediocrity? You got Dan Quinn on your staff. You have some logical, Kellen Moore is a up and coming head coach. So like you have guys on your staff that could conceivably slide right in. So, it would make sense to me if it was McCarthy, if they struggle a lot early in the season. Like there's no real excuses left, right? I mean, for him. But it's just, would Jerry actually make that sort of move mid-season? It's not something that he's really done in the past. Unless Sean Payton's ready to slide right in, which maybe he is.
I would love to see those two egos under one roof. That would be quite something. Lindsay, really, really great piece yesterday from Stephen Ruiz around Justin Herbert. Even though I am a Broncos fan, Herbert is he's ridiculous. And even though he'll be there with the Chargers hopefully for a decade or more, and he'll probably ruin many late nights for me. He is a wonderful QB. Chargers obviously put a lot of talent around him this year, but this is a team who threw away the 2006 AFC Championship game, who in 2010, number one offense, number one defense, and somehow threw it away. I remember Philip Rivers fumbling on a kneel down against the Chiefs to lose the game. The Chargers find a way to beat themselves time and time and time again. Is this the season where they put that behind them?
Yeah, we'll see, right? I mean, like, how much of that is like just like baked into a franchise? I mean, it's lasted through quarterbacks, through many head coaches, through cities now, right? I mean, like, they completely like picked up and moved, and these like Chargers gonna Charger, like, that stuff is still there. Yeah, and it's a lot of the things that you mentioned. It's consistent problems on special teams. It's weird results in close games. I mean, but the way that they literally needed like a third down stop in week 18 last year to get into the playoffs, and they couldn't do it. Needed just a tie to get in or whatever. Yeah, I mean, you want to think when you have a generational talent at quarterback and you've got the talent on defense that they wanted, now Brandon Staley kind of like has his handpicked players. He was trying to run his defense last year with guys that he didn't really want, especially in the front seven, outside of Joey Bosa, and it just didn't really work. But now he's gotten to kind of handpick his defensive tackles and trade for Khalil Mack, and they've got Derwin James under contract. They've got a corner in JC Jackson that they can conceivably play man coverage with if they want to. So you got to think at some point, they've got to just kind of break that curse. And, to me, I see them as the closest team, or the team that's ready to knock off the Chiefs more so than the Broncos or the Raiders, just in terms of like where they're at in their program building. And most of that is just because Justin Herbert is that freaking good. I mean, I way overdrafted him in a fantasy league earlier this week, and I got a couple texts. I was like, whoa, that was a surprise. I'm like, I don't care. I love him. He's going to throw 5,000 yards and I'll be fine with it. Like, I don't care that I took him in the second round. It's fine. So yeah, I mean, I don't know. I don't know how you break that curse. Like, do they need to send an exorcist or like a medium in and try to literally exorcise the demons that are going on inside all of their buildings? Send them back to Qualcomm, even in San Diego, I guess.
And Lindsay, another team that probably feels they've been dealing with demons for a long time is the Lions. We were fortunate this evening, me and Colin, to speak to one of the special teams players, and he was raving about the influence in which Dan Campbell is having on the team. And there's a lot of people that feel that they're on the right track in terms of Dan Campbell. Obviously, it's been quite evident in terms of anybody who's taken time out to watch Hard Knocks over the past 3 to 4 weeks. His influence is certainly growing on the team, and a lot of people feel they're maybe not this year, but they're potentially in a couple of years' time, a year or two maybe away from being a team that can really challenge. What's your thoughts on the Lions?
Yeah, I mean, like if they're doing a complete rebuild, and that's clearly what they've done. We saw the first steps of that last year. That's why you trade away Matthew Stafford and you accumulate a lot of picks. That this is kind of the right way to do it. I mean, the way that their season, like, it was painful for Lions fans, and I got friends who are Lions fans, and the text chains are all really funny on Sundays as they melt down. But like, there was progress, right? I mean, like, they were competitive. They were in most of the games. They were interesting to watch, but then you were bad enough that you could still get the number 2 pick and you're at the top, nearly at the top of the waiver claim and all that kind of stuff. The problem is like, their roster just still isn't that good. Like, they've got some really nice young pieces. Like, Penei Sewell is going to be a cornerstone tackle for them. I think Aiden Hutchinson is going to be great. Amon St. Ray, like Ray, I always get it wrong. Like, I think he's decent. DeAndre Swift. Like, I mean, there's some promising young players, but I just think like top to bottom, their roster is still just not quite ready to compete with even the mid-tier teams in the NFL. And, there have been these glowing reports about Jared Goff through training camp. He looks really comfortable. He's throwing the ball downfield. He's like being a good leader and all this kind of stuff. I haven't been watching as much Hard Knocks as I should. I guess he hasn't really been on it, right? Like, he hasn't been like a featured. Like,
no, he's been quite quiet on it.
And it's probably because he's been on it 2 other times. Like, who wants to watch more Jared Goff at this point? Probably not even Jared Goff's parents, but
there's a narrative from Lions fans that last year they lost their center for the season and they lost their left tackle for 14 games, and they're both back and fully healthy, and Goff is getting all the time in camp and obviously in the limited action we've seen of him in pre-season to be effective and make the team
Yeah, and they might
potentially win more
be.
games.
Yeah, I mean, maybe like what is their ceiling? 7 wins, right? Like that's progress, and then you go and get your quarterback next year. Like I think you still have some decent draft capital. You could package some stuff, some picks together if you need to move up, and that seems to be their plan. You know, it's hard to imagine that they would be a real serious contender to trade for whoever next year's version of Stafford or Russell Wilson is going to be, if guys have a say in determining where they go. But like they could put themselves in a position where quarterbacks would want to play there, or they could move up to get, it's going to be a strong quarterback class next year. That's the extent of my draft analysis. Don't ask me to do anymore. I know it's going to be a stronger class than it was this year. So those teams that are going to be searching for quarterbacks in the draft will be in a much better position this year than, say, the Steelers and company that we're looking for this year.
Lindsay, we started off talking about a quarterback and a particular deal that's just closed today. I feel that we should talk about a quarterback who still has twice as many Super Bowl rings as Aaron Rodgers or Drew Brees or Russell Wilson. It is indeed Jimmy GQ. And I'm wondering about your thoughts on that deal. I mean, is this just the NFL epitome of just staying together for the sake of the kids? That it's kind of suits the friend that suits Jimmy? Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I guess it's like a sweet deal for him if he can get over just like the awkwardness of having lost his job. Like if he's like cool and just is okay with that. I mean, the landscape made it pretty clear that there wasn't going to be another spot for him, that the Seahawks were never really that interested. And, you know, Cleveland, it just wasn't, you know, whatever this is. Maybe if it had been a year-long suspension in Cleveland, maybe that would have become a more realistic type of option. But like given his shoulder issues, that this was kind of like, he's going to get paid. He doesn't have to move. He didn't have to do a single workout in training camp. Like he didn't, you know, he did his own workouts. I think he was like, you know, running or doing some cardio on his own or whatever, but like, I guess it's not terrible. And then maybe you have the chance to go in and play the hero when Trey Lance struggles or gets hurt, and you know, I don't know. Like the awkward factor for me is just pretty high. Of like, you know, this was Jimmy's team and now it's Trey's team, but Jimmy's still hanging around. You know, it's not just like, I'm not sure if like staying together for the sake of the kid. Splitting up, you've got your new spouse in the house, but like your ex still lives in the basement. To like, it's weird. It's just awkward and weird, and maybe he's fine with awkward. Like maybe he's okay, just like he's cool enough and his buddies are fine and they don't mind. But I think it's awkward.
Let's see what happens with him and Trey. I can't wait to see what's going to happen there. Lindsay, you've been extremely generous with your time. I know how busy this week is, just trying to get ready for next week. So thank you so much for your time. At by Lindsay H. Jones, we'll definitely get you a coffee or a pint in Arizona if we see you. And
yes, hopefully I will be there. Yeah, my job has changed a little bit, but I imagine we'll be doing all our pods live from Radio Row. So awesome. I would look forward to seeing you guys there for sure.
Lindsay, and that would be great. And look, all the very, very best this season. Enjoy the season. And before you know it, yes, Mark or Brian will be buying the first rounds of coffee in Arizona.
Is there a bet about the Patriots and how bad it's going to go? Maybe that needs to be who's going to buy around.
Not yet, but I'm sure there will be before the season starts, Lindsay.
All right, let me know when that happens.
Lindsay, I'm a Giants fan. There'll be no crown coming from me whatsoever.
Fair enough.
Thanks, Lindsay.
All right, Lindsay. Talk to you guys soon. Bye.
Thanks, bye-bye. Thanks a million for Lindsay coming on. That was awesome. Great chat to Lindsay, obviously from the Ringer as well. Okay, and this chat back to the editing of the podcast. This is going to work for me. Thanks for all your questions, folks, as well, by the way. We'll get to them at the end of the show. Lads, let's talk Dublin, and then let's get a point in each, and then we'll get some questions and we'll get out of here. Last weekend, Colin, was class, wasn't it? Unreal crack, unreal experience, and obviously thanks to College Football Ireland, and thanks to everyone we met inside and outside the Aviva last week. It was great crack, and I believe the one time that we're working and we couldn't have a pint, everybody else got one, which is great.
Yeah, I think, to be honest, last Saturday it could not have gone much better for everyone bar Scott Frost. The weather was fantastic. The game was brilliant. the fact that Northwestern, kept kind of channeling their inner Undertaker and getting up off the canvas repeatedly. There was the brilliant kind of scramble and pass from Casey Thompson. There was the onside kick. There was the comeback victory. The game had everything that you would want. Coach Fitz, you can see why his players are, will run through a wall for him. You can see why he doesn't do back-to-back losing seasons. The atmosphere was great. The fact that kind of so many fans from Nebraska and Northwestern traveled over really lended itself to a great atmosphere. And I think, the fact now that we have back-to-back games, right? Like up to now, there's always been that gap, and that won't be the case, obviously, next year. So I think that will lend itself to next year being even better. And I can imagine how many Notre Dame fans are going to travel. So lots to look forward to.
Book the week off next year, Brian.
Oh, I can imagine the carnival atmosphere next year. If it's as good as it was last week, I think we're in for a treat. But look, for me, the best part of us doing the show is when we record together. You can't beat a live show together, and we haven't done one since SoFi. So to start the new season off in the Aviva, back at home as well, doing the show, and we had some great guests, and everybody was very accommodating and giving up their time. It was truly brilliant to be back doing the stuff with yourselves, and just lends to, as I said last week, just lends to the excitement of a new season. You couldn't have asked for a better game. I mean, you're going into a game where Nebraska are 13-point, Northwestern are 13-point underdogs, and to get the game he did, and for the underdogs to win, and then obviously to see the press conference after, which is delightful in the way to see Fitzgerald. So starting with the win, and I suppose he took everything in. He enjoyed the experience very much, and he was very complimentary about going to Ireland on the Dan Patrick show this week. And then you've got Coach Ross, which is that the vultures were out for him, I would say, in the media room straight away after the game from Nebraska, in terms of the writers there who were looking to see when he was going to pack his bags and move on. So looking for a fan of the college game, there's a lot of enticing stories ahead, but thankfully we're going to be focusing more so on the league, the NFL league going forward.
Mark, am I staying at your house next year, or what's the plan? You give me the penthouse or the suite, or what's the plan?
I'll give you the East Wing. East Wing, Michael. East Wing. I stay in the West Wing with the Oval Office. I actually personally had the best 8-year-old's birthday party of all time. So that decision and that timing needs to be changed next year. So I'll be definitely double checking before I book that in again this year, exactly when the college game is next year. But we had a great time. Looking forward, it's always about the future, not necessarily the past. Looking forward to Notre Dame Navy next year. The two teams of Joe Montana and Roger Staubach, storied occasions. And I was at the last Notre Dame Navy game in Dublin, which was a great occasion as well. So definitely looking forward to that. Definitely looking forward to the continued growth of college football in Ireland. Just to you guys, fantastic job over the weekend, guys. What a great piece of coverage for everyone watching. And look, next year, we've already been having a bit of crack with the Dan Patrick show. We know Will Ferrell and Paul Rudd, Jennifer Garner, apparently, we're all coming over. So look forward to having it bigger and better and having a bit of fun there at the same time.
Bring it on next year. It's going to be a great crack. Thanks. August 26th, Mark, for that birthday party. That's the day it's on. Don't know what time yet. I'd speculate 5:30 again, probably 12:30 Eastern. It won't be announced sooner at the time. Big thanks to the Aer Lingus College Football Classic for your support over the last 12 months. It's been great. Let's do it again next year. Colin, let's start off with you. Any other business? There's been stuff going on in the last hour while we've been recording that we can probably touch on. Before we get to people's questions, does everybody want to give something each? I'll start off. Tom Brady doesn't look bothered. Doesn't look bothered whatsoever. And we'll see next Sunday night. Now, I've had that conversation with 2 other people, and they agree with me as well. But he'll just go and sort of prove me wrong again this year. But whatever he's doing to his face, I mean, yeah, he's looking all right. So, I mean...
You mean he doesn't look bothered about the fact that he was away for 10 days?
He doesn't look that motivated, mate.
What do you want from him? What do you want from him to come out in his uniform at the press conference?
I watched. Have you watched the press conference?
Yeah, he spoke about the reason. Father time has caught up with him. He has.
I think that has, and I think you're going to see it in the field, Brian.
All the time, in the sense that he has responsibilities outside football. That's what I mean. Not the age.
Don't know.
I mean,
we'll see next Sunday, Colin.
Yeah, look, I've talked about it repeatedly. I said it last year. I think you begin to see a decline, but I still have Tom Brady as one of the top QBs. The universe is tilted in his favor, and as I said on our previous show, it's a double-digit win season. There's nothing. It is what it is. What it is. Much more interested in the kind of new batch of QBs, and I think Keith has an interesting question around like which of the QBs will have a better season. We talked about it. I really feel for Justin Fields. I thought he actually looked really good in preseason. Preseason's not worth anything, but as much as he can, I mean, this is a guy who could end up on another team next year, because I imagine the Bears are going to end up drafting really high, so he could end up elsewhere, and I'm really interested to see what Trevor Lawrence can do with a competent head coach. But last year was so bad, but he has huge shoes to fill, because this is a guy who was talked about in the same manner as John Elway, as Andrew Luck coming in to the league, is that kind of the level of expectation that was on him. So it's going to be difficult for him to fulfill that. And I feel that in the same way Lindsay was talking about the Lions, and they've added talent, and the Jags have added talent as well, but is there enough there? It should certainly be better than it was, but is it and will it be enough? So I am delighted that once again we are just over a week away now. A week away from obviously the Thursday game, but just over a week from the first suite of Sunday games and the return of Red Zone.
I said earlier on this evening that even these trades or potential players being released is not, we're not there just because the 53 been announced. And in the past there, OJ Howard, who was supposed to sign for the Bengals yesterday, has now signed for the Texans, which is quite strange. And Joe Shane, tongue-in-cheek, said tonight, if we don't find $5 million, we won't be playing next Sunday, because we can't find a way to get under the cap. And he said he'd have to look at renewing players' contracts, which is the first thing he said he wouldn't do from day one. So it doesn't come as a surprise that Blake Martinez, who's one of our most efficient players on defense, has just been released in the past hour, having renegotiated a contract earlier in the offseason. So maybe he wasn't. He was tongue-in-cheek, but he did what he had to do, essentially, to get the money. Doesn't bode well.
Personally, I'm just amazed. Michael McQuaid is betting against both Bill Belichick and Tom Brady this season, which, Michael, you could be right. I mean, it'd be the first time in 21 years in relation to it, but you could be right. I hear the logic on the Belichick one. The Brady one, I'm less convinced by, because of the competitive juices and aspects. But you've touched on in this show, like the 11-day absence. It's a little bit unusual. So let's see how that pans out and how these players look on the field. And from my perspective, this is the bit of the season I just get most excited by. We don't know how some of these new head coaches, you guys got a new head coach in Denver, there's a new head coach in the Raiders, new head coaches in multiple locations around the NFL. There's new positional coaches. I've talked a little bit about Brian Daboll going to New York and the impact that's going to have on the Buffalo offense. And does Ken Dorsey go on the hot seat if they're not firing on all citizens in the first 4 or 5 games? And not only that, players playing in different schemes. Sometimes they're unlocked. Sometimes they're more bottled up. So again, how that impacts. And of course, rookie. All of these draft picks, all the draft picks back in April, we're getting all excited and giddy about. Let's see him on the field. Let's see him in a real, meaningful NFL game at full speed and see what impact they have. Who knows? The next Micah Parsons will come out. The next, well, not next Trevor Lawrence, but you get my drift. The next breakthrough star of the NFL is just around the corner, and it all starts in a week's time.
Can't wait. Bring it on. Get the coffee in. Thanks to everyone who's commented on tonight's show. We'll get some comments on the screen here. First off, Ben Finnegan saying hashtag Who dat? I wonder who he supports. Hello to Fred and hello to Keith. I'll get a question in from both these lads, or a point in. First one, Fred says, I still fancy Dallas to win the NFC East. Fred, happy days, sir. Go for it. Happy days. Do you agree with that, lads? Yeah.
Check out the NFC East review we did, Fred. I think one of us at least picked Dallas still to win.
Yeah, I think Fred, in fairness, he commented this afternoon, and I haven't caught up with the show because he was too busy watching some show or whatever he called it last night, and he took time out today to watch the show. So I think he knows exactly who picked the Cowboys to win the division, Mark.
I'd say as well, basically, I guess he was sort of caught up with all that time last night as well. Was it 7 minutes or whatever? What was the menu like at Lansdowne Road? I don't know. We were media and all we got was chili con carne. So, yeah.
You'd have to clarify, does he mean the drinks menu or the food menu? Because it's like when me and Colin go into a place together, Colin goes over there and looks at the food menu and I go over there and look at the drinks menu. So it'd be interesting to see which path Fred would take.
Sleeper team. This is from Keith, so people on the podcast. Keith is saying, who will be a sleeper team who'll make a big run this season? I'll go first.
While you're thinking, Michael,
I'm still waiting.
Vikings? Up.
Vikings. Vikings are gonna. Vikings, I imagine, if you're looking for a sleeper team, because we've talked about the Chargers, we've talked about the Eagles, so I don't think you can classify either of those teams as sleeper teams. The Vikings haven't got a whole lot of love in pre-season, but I think that if things were to go right with Kevin O'Connell and with Kirk Cousins, that could be one to really keep an eye on. And they were obviously playing, as we discussed in the divisional preview show, it was a culture of fear last year that doesn't work, and I think having a change from that could really see the Vikings have a good year.
I'm in line with the man who got very excited when he called out my name when he came on the show, and that's Rich Eisen. I don't know if they are a sleeper team, but he thinks the Raiders are the best team in the division, and they're my sleeper team.
Yeah, it's a tough year to pick sleeper teams. We talked in the NFC, it's kind of pretty top heavy in that regard. So trying to pick a sleeper team, the Vikings, I see a lot of value on. But even in the AFC, there's a lot of teams that have opportunities and potential there. It's the toughest division in the NFL. But yeah, I like the Raiders too to potentially come through. I mean, we haven't got to wildcard picks. So who's going to get the 3 wildcards of the AFC? I think it's going to be fascinating.
Don't ruin that preview, Sean.
I'm not just setting it up, Brian. Just building it up gradually for the explosion.
Looking forward to that next week. All of our divisional previews are on YouTube now, I think. There might be 2 more. I can't remember. Do you know what? I actually can't remember anymore. You can get them on the podcast as well. Just search Irish NFL Show on your provider. There's also a link which just takes you to your local one on our page tomorrow morning at 7 a.m. Was there any foot-long chili cheese dogs, Brian? No, there wasn't. Finally, Stephen was saying, what do you guys think of the crowd of the Aviva? He was talking about some of the seats and stuff, but lads, I thought the crowd was great, and I think it'll be full of Irish fans next year as well. It was a good crack, Colin, yeah?
Yeah, I mean, I think, what was it? It was almost 43,000, which I think for NFL, my understanding is that they reduce the capacity somewhat, so it drops to in around kind of 49,000 for an NFL or an American football game there. So to be 6,000 off, given that, you know, neither Northwestern or Nebraska would have the ties to Ireland that Notre Dame have. To me, it actually showed huge interest in the game here. We met lots and lots of fans from Ireland, obviously met lots of fans from the States. But from what I saw, I think probably in and around maybe at most like 20,000, I think probably somewhere in the region of kind of 17 to 20,000 traveled over, but it still means that more than 50% of the crowd were from Ireland, from the UK, or from elsewhere in Europe, which I think is a really good sign of the health of the game over here. And I would imagine next year when Notre Dame rock into town, I don't think there will be any empty seats in the Aviva.
Yeah, we Sorry, Brian, I was just going to say we touched on this about the Munich game that some people are looking forward to, obviously, and hoping to go to. That people are saying, hey, the Allianz Arena can hold more, but American football and even the NFL, they actually close off some of the lower level for the size of the bench, for the size of the subs, etc. So your capacity, like it was in the other day, is slightly reduced. But as Colin says, when 30 to 35,000 Notre Damers in particular are traveling over next year, I think it's going to be even harder for the local Irish crowd to get a ticket. So it's going to be even more of a boisterous atmosphere, but probably more difficult to get into next year.
Now the guys have summed it up. Like, bear in mind, if you went to the game, you'd think Nebraska were the prominent team in terms of the support. I thought Northwestern held their own, and throughout the game, and obviously it got us interest as the game goes into the fourth quarter, and they're still with an opportunity. And obviously they won out in the end, but they didn't have as many supporters there. But by God, did they make some noise. And in fairness, I think all the neutrals were all leaning towards Northwestern. So I felt that the atmosphere, especially in the fourth quarter, is the game. There's nothing better than a game on the lights as well. As the game went on, and I think it was 4 hours. Like, I know where you say the average for an NFL game or a college game is 3 hours. For the game to be nearly 4 hours before it ended, I think everybody walked away really pleased and can't complain about the atmosphere. I think overall it's been a great success.
Big shout out to the Northwestern journalist who approached me and Brian throughout the game. Good crack. And congrats. Thanks everyone watching tonight. We're back on Sunday night with a couple of special guests, including the GM of NFL UK and Europe, NFL UK, Henry Hodgson, as well as a special guest from the Detroit Lions. And also we're back on Wednesday night for like a final preview show ahead of the season where we make picks for the Super Bowl, and many different categories as well. You'll find that on the podcast first, but it'll be on Wednesday night at 10 o'clock. We're back live on Thursday night for the kickoff of the NFL season at 10 o'clock. And we're also back live at 9:30 p.m. next Friday as we look ahead to all the Week 1 games. Gonna be a great crack. Excited football's back. Appreciate everybody coming on tonight, folks. If you're watching this on YouTube, can you please like, share, subscribe, check out the bio link. You can sign up to NFL Game Pass now. If you click that link, you can watch over 270 plus non-blackout games if you sign up to NFL Game Pass this season. Click the link to watch for free in the preseason. And we're also presented by Cassidy Travel. Lads, thanks a million for tonight. Good crack. See you next week. Season's about to start.
Yeah, and the thing about the season starting, Michael, the chicken wings in the Woolshed taste even better when regular season football starts. Cannot wait.
I'll see you there next Sunday. See you soon, folks. Have a good night.
Yeah, what?
Yeah.